Hey everyone, so coming back to you on Citrus Corner, we're diving back into the high seas for some recent breaking Disney news that Disney had purchased a previously built ship to add to their cruise line fleet. This has been some rumors and talk for some time now, but Disney confirmed it yesterday, and we're going to get into it coming up on Citrus Corner. Gotta love it. So joining me today, my fantastic panel, my brothers, my comrades, my everything for this channel. I'm going to start down below. Mr. Vasky, Dr. Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. Dre, the DA. Veep, veep. How's it going, brother?
Doing pretty good. This is a story that I remember talking to OG about, saying, we might want to keep an eye on this, because I think this might happen here. Unfortunately, didn't talk about it on the show at all. But hey, it happened, so now we get to talk about it. So yay for us. Hey, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go and do so right down there at VashSky. The Twitter discussion has been very, let's say, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say,
very robust
lately, so definitely tune into that. Oh, gee, you got that drop for me.
I got that drop. Walt, take it away.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all, indeed, is, well, it's right here on the channel you're watching at Orange Grove 55, and you can find me there at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Let's see. Joko Cruz seems apt.
There you go. And of course, no show on this channel is without Mr. the OG himself, Mr. Orange Grove 55. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. Now, look, I got to be honest. After that first time trip, that first time Disney cruise, what was it, last week? My interest has peaked in regards to this subject of the cruise line. So I think it'll be a very, very fun conversation, and I can't wait to dive in. And real quick, I want to get the party started.
And now your host,
Disney Family Man 23.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I think it was kind of ironic that, we just recently recorded a video on the cruise line for OG's first time Disney cruise, and lo and behold, right after we were done recording, breaking news. I tell you, they're watching us. They know.
They know. Oh, OG released a video on cruise line. Okay, perfect time. Here we go.
Cool.
It's like let's throw them a bone a little bit.
So call Chapes up and be like, "Hey, Chapes, make the announcement. Make the announcement." Okay, cool. We're good.
There you go.
I know you had so much pull, OG, man.
So this ship, previously known as the Global Dream, was a ship that was built. I believe it was in Wismar, Germany.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And it was partially the whole ship is built, but the interior was partially finished with more to be. And then I guess Mr. Vasky, you, I think, have more of the details on how Disney ended up requiring this. So I'll pass that along to you.
Yes. Yeah. So this is a very interesting story, because the previous company who had actually ordered this ship had gone bankrupt over the world events. I don't know if you've heard, but they've been particularly terrible for the cruise line industry, especially for sure. Who can forget some of the headlines coming out of some major ports and some major cruise liners that had some breakouts of a certain virus recently, and so unfortunately that has really sullied the cruise industry. And I guess the original commissioners for the Global Dream were the victims of that, frankly. This was a cruise ship that was ordered, I believe, in about 2017, 2018, at the price of about, at that time, 1.6 billion euros, which was a lot, and it was specifically made for the Asian market. Genting Hong Kong was the company's name, and apparently they are no more. However, this thing was, I mean, from what we understand, about 75% complete. You can actually go ahead and share my screen, OG. We will get to this in a moment, but I wanted to go ahead and take you through what this was actually supposed to be like. This was a 20-deck ship here, about 208,000, gross tons. To put that in perspective, the Disney Wish right now is about 144,000. So this was quite a larger vessel. The Disney Wish being about 15 decks, this was 20. So this was a large thing here. Had movie theater accommodations. I know some people ask me about, will there be a theater type thing built in? Well, apparently it was supposed to have it on day one. I think Disney will retrofit that, but this was supposed to be a pretty large ship here, about passenger capacity of around 9,000, which would have been the largest cruise ship by passenger count in the world. So this would have been quite big. It would have featured a roller coaster on top, a water park, but unfortunately, when that company went bankrupt, in terms of the people bankrolling this thing, it just set kind of abandoned in the shipyard there. But this was pretty far along here, and let me see here. Just trying to get some more photos. Yeah, you can see it right there. I mean, this thing was fairly. I mean, it was getting done here, and the original plan was to actually scrap it, because when looking at interested parties, like the big cruise, industry, whether it be Norwegian, Carnival, all of that, they just simply did not have the capital expenditure necessary to take a project like this on. You can see here that's when they were shipping the bulk of the hull to that German shipyard. So yeah, I mean, this was a significant project just left abandoned. So the rumors started going around that maybe they might scrap it, which would have been a horrible loss, of course. But if you don't have a buyer, what are you actually going to do? You got to clear this thing out. Well, I think it was like a month ago or so, Disney apparently became interested. I guess the shipyard had fallen into the hands of the naval company, the shipbuilding company that has produced the Fantasy, the Dream, and the Wish. If I'm not mistaken.
Meyer Werft.
Meyer Werft, yeah. And so they have actually taken on that shipyard in terms of managing it and so forth. So, I guess they said, hey, Disney, you interested? And I guess they kicked the tires a little bit there, and now they're actually going to be acquiring it. Now, again, that passenger count, that's a lot there. And we all know Disney, they like a little bit more cabin space, right? They like a bit more accommodations than maybe some of the other cruise line companies out there. So apparently they are going to reduce that overall capacity to about 6,000 guest passengers with a crew of around 2,300. So they will be making, I think, a lot of adjustments, and not just to the interior as most people expect, but also to the exterior. And this gives you an idea of just about how significant these changes might actually be. I want to go ahead and bring you guys' attention to the portholes right here. You see how they're round in this concept rendering?
Right.
If you remember, from when this thing was actually in the shipyard being constructed, these portholes are actually square.
Oh man, they had to go in and change all those portholes.
So this will be still a significant investment, but I can assure you, if these guys were actually going to scrap it, Disney's buying this probably pennies on the dollar. And we'll go into some of the market forces that might have incentivized Disney to actually make this call. But I can tell you right now, folks, this was a steal. This thing was a good investment for sure.
And actually, to move into that subject, for my question that I posted on Twitter, because they had announced that this ship would be ready to set sail in 2025. Now, yes. I do know that if you go on meyerwerft.com, it gives all the ships that they are manufacturing of dates and times when you could either they're already shipped out, no pun intended, under construction, or just in like the blueprint phase. And it says that out of the 3 ships that Disney was already building, the Wish, and then the Treasure, and then the third one,
the 3 Triton class ships.
Correct. They said the third one would be ready by 2025. So when I read this and it said this ship would be ready to set sail in 2025, was it Disney's intention on building the third out of the 3 Triton class ships, but because this was a steal to kind of cut corners and save money, is this ship now the number 3, or is this going to be alongside the third Triton class? So there'd be 2 released in 2025.
So
that's interesting.
Technically, this will be a class all its own. I don't think this will be a Triton class ship, simply because of the sheer scale of it, and because it was originally commissioned and designed for another cruise liner altogether. So I think this will be its own class. But in order, the timeline is very interesting, George, and I do agree with you. I would suspect that they want the Treasure and this 7th cruise ship out first, and this one capping off maybe the Triton class entirely, and this being the last to start sailing in 2025. I would think that's going to be how it's done, but I really don't know. And again, that timeline that could always be shifted, of course, because there's some global things here that might complicate some matters, which is why I think Disney was like, let's go into this, because this is an interesting story here. The original 2 ships, as you know, George, were built by the, I believe, Italian shipbuilders, right?
Correct.
The Magic and the Wonder.
Yes.
They had switched to a German shipbuilder. Yeah, exactly, right? They had switched to a German shipbuilder for the Fantasy, the Dream, and the Wish, of course, and also the Treasure and their 7th cruise ship, yet to be unnamed. And I believe that was for cost reasons, because Germany had really... what is it? They had become the kind of the lead industrial manufacturer for all types of industry, and they had really kind of cornered that market pretty nicely, at least in Europe. But a large part of that was because of cheap natural gas, specifically via Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, going back to Russia. Now, you understand that that's a different
situation right now.
That's a different situation right now, as one can probably assume. Apparently, Turkey might be the intermediary. We'll see on that. But from what we understand, those pipelines might not be in use going forward. We will see on that. But those natural gas costs and those energy costs specifically might get far more expensive. Also, too, you have the lead time for some of these materials that are used for some of these cruise ships, particularly steel, being very much extended. I was looking into this a little bit, and apparently there are steel producers and manufacturers and suppliers and so forth that are they're understaffed themselves, so their capacity in terms of turning out product has been constricted ever since the world did what it did in 2020, and apparently those pressures haven't been alleviated.
You mean the pandy?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect. That is exactly it. So, I mean, honestly, to build a ship of this size by Disney just from scratch, this probably would have taken, probably 6, 7, 8 years at least. The lead time would have been very much extended even from some of these most recent ships. Moreover, the costs. I'm sure a ship of this size would have been at least double, if not more, than what was originally commissioned in 2017. So I'm telling you guys, this is an absolute steal.
Well, go ahead, OG.
Well, I was just going to say, they actually, not only was it smart to kind of take over, but it was actually like perfect timing, because from what you can see, this other company, they built enough of the ship that got basically the foundation kind of set for Disney, but not too far along in the process where it's too late to change and kind of Disney-fy it.
Yeah.
So it's that perfect Goldilocks kind of like kind of zone where it's like, okay, they built enough of it where we have a ship now, but not too far along where we can't go in and change it where it's going to be overly expensive. Really, they just perfect timing. Perfect timing.
And that's where it kind of lets me have the notion kind of going back and forward, back and forth with the notion that is it possible for Disney to kind of cut their ways and have a ship that's already built so that way they don't have to deal with building a third ship from the ground up in the sense of saving money, even though it's going to cost an arm and a leg probably just to even reshape the ship to their standards of what they want, just as you had mentioned, Vash, with the round portholes and everything. But I wonder if they kind of took that cost and effect of saying, okay, to build a cruise ship from scratch and then taking this. So that's why I'm wondering, is this going to be the third of the Triton? But then also it read in the description that this is going to be the first ever using the green methanol as the fuel. So that was not mentioned in the Triton class. So that makes me think, oh, is it, as you mentioned, is this going to be separate all on their own? And they also mentioned that this ship is going to be based outside of the US.
Right. Asia, I believe, right? From what I understand. Like I thought I read Asia was where they were kind of looking at right now. I could be wrong on that, but
I was originally just destined for that market. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me. It's not so surprising that these are home ported elsewhere. That's been kind of a trend in the cruise line industry, tax purposes, of course. So,
and they said for the when they refurbished Port Canaveral, it was meant to hold 3 Disney cruise ships at once. So since the Dream moved to Miami, it now holds the Fantasy and the Wish, and then the Treasure. So that makes me wonder, is this really going to be the third? So that's where I kind of go back and forth. I'm very curious to see, is this the 7th ship or is this the 8th ship? Because that would mean 2 ships would have to open in 2025.
And you know what's
I think.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting too is that Disney, the cruise line is becoming a force to be reckoned with. The cruise line is becoming like initially, right? When it was founded, I think in 1998. It was sort of an extension of the theme parks, but the cruise line is getting big enough now. It's almost like becoming its own kind of thing. Like it's almost like kind of separating itself from even the theme parks, and the cruise line is its own entity. I mean, look, you know, I think that's interesting. It's getting really big.
And that's a big statement on Disney's behalf, because if you really think of what's going on in the world today and how they're hesitant to put any investment into the parks right now, but yet they're going to go and purchase this ship and really have that in their mindset to say, you know, this is going to be kind of a bigger market right now than the parks. But I do think in time they will invest in the parks, but to kind of put this kind of on the front burner, and it's very interesting.
I think Disney saw an opportunity that they could, like, layoffs, cuts, economy, recession, all that aside, when you see a good deal, you got to snatch it up, right?
You have to.
It's like when that house, that perfect house, you're looking to buy a home, but maybe not right now, right? But you drive by and you see the perfect house being built, and it's like the perfect price, it's the perfect everything, and you might not be 100% ready right now, but man, you can't. How do you pass that deal up? You kind of work. You kind of make things happen to get that done, because it's not the perfect timing, but it's the perfect price and the perfect house. You get it done. And I think that's kind of what happened here. I don't think Chapek and company really thought, oh, you know what, this is a great time to do this. I just think that they saw an opportunity.
Yes.
The ship was like halfway built or whatever. It's like Dre said, pennies on the dollar. You know, steel is really expensive right now. Like, how do you pass that up? Even in turbulent times, it just makes sense to fork it over, because if you wait and you miss that, if you miss the boat, so to speak, no pun intended, then what? They just had to jump on it. They had to jump on it.
I do agree, and like, you know, like we have heard, it's like 75% complete. I mean, this is like a 4 or 5 year lead time that you just fell into. It's like, oh, this is perfect. You know, it really is a a particularly nice situation. Some people were critical and saying, "Oh, I remember when Disney used to build their own cruise liners," and it's like, from
Did they though?
stem to bow, and well, yeah, exactly. So they outsourced to ship builders, of course. Right? It wasn't Disney themselves building these things ever. But moreover, I mean, it's like. Yes, you could levy maybe some criticism on this, of course. Well, it really should be designed by the Imagineers from stem to bow and in the blueprint. Yeah, okay, I get it, but let's be honest. Disney has kind of a history with doing some of this stuff, and this was back in the 1950s. Remember when Disneyland was actually being built? Not only was the park being built, but 2 steam locomotives were being built at that same time, the CK Holiday and the EP Ripley. But after that point, I believe it was... it may have been Roger Broggie or some other people who were saying, "Hey, Walt, some of this old tech in terms of these steam engines are coming, like some people are selling these things for scrap and so forth. They're moving on to diesel and stuff like that. Could we actually take some of these historical relics in the railroad and railroad history and refurb them?" And that's what started that whole kind of thing with the Fred Gurley, with the Ernest S. Marsh, the Ward Kimball. Those 3 steam locomotives at Disneyland have unique histories of their own, being used and repurposed from their original intent. I believe we're on the precipice of the Walt Disney World Railroad also coming online, and I believe those were Mexican steam trains, if I'm not mistaken, which were rehabbed and repurposed for Walt Disney World's usage. So it's like, I think the Disney company has a history of doing stuff like this, right? And even with the hotels, originally the Polynesian and the was the Contemporary, they were not Disney-owned properties, right? They were going to be built and actually managed by outside companies with a licensing deal, but they had to take those over as well. So you never know with this stuff. It could work out. It really could.
Well, and even in animation, I know it's different. It's a different situation, but it's not really even that different. Like, if you even look at animation and like back in like Walt Disney's day, he didn't build everything from scratch. A lot of the Disney company was built on existing stories. Yeah. Snow White was in existence a long time before Walt Disney came around, Most of his fairy tales were stories. Well, they all were. They were stories that existed long before he came around and decided to make a movie about. So, look, I know it's different than like a physical thing, but it's kind of the same idea where it's like Disney has a history, like you said, Dre, to your point, a history of like taking something that already exists and sort of reimagining it, maybe improving upon it, giving their own twist on it. And this is just an extension of that, whether it be what they did with the animated films, whether it be with like what you were talking about with the steam trains, or now the newest Disney Cruise Line ship. They've always done this. So, or
honestly, even look at the attractions in the parks themselves. When you take the Universe of Energy, now it's Cosmic Rewind, and really the whole entire attraction of the Universe of Energy is just the queue and the loading area for that attraction. And they just built, extended it. So if you really look at that and you say, oh, well, they made a brand new attraction. Yes, but it came off of an existing building. It's just building on
Some of the early Fantasyland and other attractions at Disneyland were repurposed aero designs, right? They've repurposed designs from Vekoma and so forth to get some of those roller coasters built in that we experience and love in Disney theme park. So this kind of history of kind of repurposing, reimagining, so forth, it's been happening quite a bit. Look, we'll have to kind of see how this situation bears out, whether, how big and substantial these changes are actually going to be with this ship. But let's not forget, folks, the Disney Wonder, I believe it makes its debut in 1998. I believe the Magic makes its debut in 1999, if I'm not mistaken.
Vice versa. Magic was the first, then the Wonder.
I do apologize. So you're talking late 90s here. we're getting up on them being around for close to 30 years here, and that's about the average lifespan of any cruise liner around the world is about 30 years. Now, apparently, it can last much longer, and Disney will have to make a decision on, maybe rehabbing these, reimagining these, all that kind of stuff. But if they do that, you might have 2 cruise ships that might be in some port somewhere in Germany being worked on or scrapped or whatever. This gives the company the flexibility to do that and not actually cannibalize the fleet too much. So
and if that actually comes to be, and people are going to get on Disney about that, and again, it's not just Disney doing this in the cruise line industry. Many that are in the cruise line industry, Carnival, Norwegian, South Pacific, they've had many of their ships scrapped and rebuilt into another form or sold off the market. So again, what a lot of people are doing, even just in talks with the company as cost cutting and freezing and what have you, it's not just happening at Disney. It is happening at Warner Brothers. It's happening for Netflix. It's happening for Universal. And a lot of people don't necessarily focus on that. They only focus on putting the spotlight on Disney and those negative aspects. But the truth be told, it's around on any company at any given time. And honestly, I have to commend Disney on this to try to find a way to cost cut, but still give a good quality type product. And this is what they're doing, and not the cherry pick and everything, but it is what it is.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, and look, I'm very new to the cruise thing, and George, you are much more knowledgeable and seasoned on this. The Wonder, if I'm not mistaken, recently got a pretty big refurb, right? Like in 2019, I believe.
Both the Magic and the Wonder got a refurb. They added the Tiana's Place onto the Wonder. That's actually one of the newest restaurants. That was not an original restaurant, and they added Rapunzel's to the Magic. Plus, they added the Aqua Dunk onto the Magic, which is a brand new type of water slide.
So I think based on that, being that they were kind of they got some TLC just a few years ago, I think that we will have the Wonder and the Magic for at least a few more years. Thankfully, my first time was on the Wonder, so I do have my heart is on that ship a little bit. I do love that ship, but I mean, I think that we have at least a little bit of time with them. I think that from what I understand, 2019 was when they kind of did all that stuff, and that wasn't too long ago. So hopefully, but eventually, I mean, they will have to retire some of these ships. And that's a whole other conversation. What will they do when they retire ships? I know military vessels, I think like the USS Kitty Hawk, right? Don't they implode the ship and they sink it to the bottom of the ocean for military vehicles? Are they going to do that with Disney cruise lines?
Well, that's... You have military secrets and stuff like that, right? You got some stuff going on there. I think the scrapping process is, for cruise liners, they don't quite do that. I don't think.
Man.
But hey,
imagine the possibilities, man. You can sink that thing in what Castaway Cay, and you can make it a little play area underwater with scuba gear.
There you go, right?
Well, that's actually interesting because they do have that excursion on Castaway Cay where if you go scuba diving, you can locate Mickey and Minnie, and they're down below the water. So that would be kind of interesting to see past cruise ships that Disney.
It would be. It would be. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But look, I mean, you have I think Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and so forth. They have dozens of ships, so they have the flexibility to retire ships and all that kind of stuff. Disney, they're only going to have 8, and that's in 2025.
Well, and that's actually what I was just going to mention. I think Disney's going to have to wait till they build up their brand of the fleet itself before they start retiring ships, because they're going to have so many ports of call that if you remove ships and you're going to have to move ships, then you're going to kind of have ports of call that are not being utilized by Disney. So I think to kind of keep that flowing, they have to have an X amount of number of ships before they can start retiring, or they can start retiring the ships knowing that there are more ships that are being produced shortly after.
That's one of the advantages with as big of a fleet as they have, is because I think they really do want to get into some more markets than they have already. We're hearing more markets and more itineraries being added. I think they want to make those regular itineraries, but you can only do that with a sizable fleet. Also, too, I think this new island that they've invested in. It's taken a while to get to this point. Island hopping is tough, but with this new island, I think it will also facilitate them to have maybe even more cruise ships actually, dock or port at some of these places, more than currently is available at Castaway Cay, right? I believe is the island name. Okay, so yeah, I mean they're really expanding this space. And to get back to an earlier segment of this conversation, I think Christine Wastelands McCarthy actually said that the revenue potential of the cruise line, I mean, it's just in the stratosphere. It really is just. It is a segment of their business that they're really proud of and that they're really excited about for being in. So the parks, you're reaching this kind of saturation point, right? It's kind of an established industry. It's been around for 50 plus years. You can expand, but doing new parks is difficult and all that. Whereas you bankroll a couple cruise liners, and it's like, wow, now we have the ability to have 4,000 plus people, 6,000 plus people on any one of these at any given time. So they are shifting some resources around, and honestly, when the company needs as much cash flow as possible, this is it right here. And this is a great investment for a company who I've been critical of when it came to investments before it.
Let me ask you guys a question. I just want to ask you guys a quick question, because I asked Dre this question on the phone, but obviously I want to do it on the video so everyone can kind of chime in. What do you guys think are the chances? Because Universal, they're, like as George says, they're going balls to the wall. Like they are really aggressive in the theme park market, right? Maybe not so much in streaming, Peacock, but definitely in the theme park market, they're going all out. What are the chances that we see a Universal ship? What do you guys think about that? Like, do you think they're ever going to dip their toe into this? That would be interesting.
Would be. It would be. Doing research for this segment, I believe Disney back in like 1985, I believe, had a licensing deal with like Premier Cruise Line. Right?
Yes.
And I believe that was the kibosh was put on that in 1993. One of the reasons was because they were doing a deal with Universal. Interestingly enough, so look out for maybe a licensing deal with one of these cruise liners for major characters, or a tie-in or something like that, and that might give an indication on what Comcast's future plans are regarding this space. But George, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, that was actually very interesting that you brought that up, because Disney did have a licensing agreement to have their characters on a non-Disney commercial fleet at that time. And, that's how they kind of got into it. And then they started the plans to actually for Disney to have their own cruise liners back in 1992. So that's when they started talking about it. And it actually was Michael Eisner that kind of wanted that traditional classic cruise liner look. Yes. And I mean, if you actually look at some of the concepts that the Imagineers came up with before the fight, they were some funky looking ships, I have to say.
I really like the design that they ended up settling on, because it kind of harkens back to like the old school ships of like the 1930s and stuff. I think it's the Disney Cruise Line, that the colors, the designs are very classy, and I really like that. Some of the earlier designs were a little too bombastic with the Disney. I mean, look, I'm a Disney guy. I love Disney, but like sometimes you can go a little too much with it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that some of those early designs are a little kind of in your face. This is much more classic, kind of like cruise liners, ocean liners back in the day. But it has that subtlety to it. Like but it's Disney, but it's subtle. I like that. I like that they did that, and they didn't go just complete balls to the wall Disney like craziness. I don't know, just my personal thing. I prefer that.
I agree.
the perfect combination of, it's kind of that lightning in a bottle moment, let's say, of like, okay, we inherited the Jack Rather Corporation for the Disneyland hotel rights, but we had this Queen Mary. We could do something with this, but then they took inspiration for it for the actual cruise liner, vessels that they would commission to be built themselves. And the color stylings from John Hench, Michael Eisner, who was like, hey, let's infuse Mickey into this as much as possible, and all kind of just, mixed into this kind of witch's brew of awesomeness. I know a lot of people, when The Wish actually came out and took a lot of those design elements and kind of cast them aside a little bit, a lot of people responded very, let's say there was some outrage, right? Because people had gotten used to how Disney conducted business when it came to their vessels. One more thing I wanted to share with you.
Sure.
OG, if you want to share my screen one more time.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you see here, you see these funnels on top. These things are massive, right? And this cruise liner will actually have at least 3, but I say at least 3 because you can see right back here, it might actually have 6 funnels, whereas the Wish, their biggest very only has 2. So this thing is going to be very, very big. Very, very big for sure.
Even the Wonder that I was on, which is the smallest of all of them, only had, I think, 2, right, George?
All of the ships thus far have 2. So when I saw this concept art of having 3, this thing is gonna almost damn near double the size of the Dream and the Fantasy, which are already bigger than the Magic and the Wonder, so it's, and then with all the new itineraries coming out, as Dre had mentioned, Lighthouse Point, which is going to be the new island alongside Castaway Key. They added new itineraries for Australia and New Zealand. That's where the Wonder's going to move. So that's going to be very interesting, because now, since the Wonder is going to be moving to those itineraries, that's going to leave room up for the San Diego cruises and the Mexican cruises. So they're going to have ships moving out of there, out of Galveston, out of New Orleans. So
any word on that? I was going to ask you that. Because, so the Wonder, because our concierge team, Angeline and Mariella, were talking about that they have to, like, they were doing some prep or something for those Australian and New Zealand cruises. So the Wonder moves over there. Any rumor as to what ship will take the place in San Diego?
As of right now, nothing has been mentioned of what ship is going to be. However, they would have to go the opposite way, because that's the reason why they have the Wonder moving through the Panama Canal to get through from the East Coast to the West Coast. So any of the other ships would either have to travel going the opposite way instead of going through the Panama Canal. So that's going to be
Magic would be
the Magic would probably be the next. Yeah, the Magic would probably be the next one. But as far as I know, but then who's going to take the Magic's itinerary? So it's like, so that's where, in that mindset, that's where I feel like there is going to be 8 ships, because, to have the 3 down in Port Canaveral, and then you're going to have another one being built, and then the one overseas, and then you have the Magic and the Wonder. So.
Scott Guston confirmed that their prior arrangements for the Treasure and the Seventh wouldn't be altered in any way with the addition of this new vessel. So
see, I'm wondering if the Triton class is going to be in Port Canaveral. You'll have the Wish, the Triton, and the Seventh, and then the Dream stays in Miami. I wonder if they'll move the Fantasy over to the West Coast, or unless the Fantasy joins the Dream down in Miami. So that way they'll have 2 ships out of that port.
That would be interesting. Hey, bring any of them over here. I'm down to try another one. So whatever one you want to bring them
you
over.
Need more ships, I think, is what what I'm hearing. So that's again another reason why you do this. Great purchase. This was a great thing. Look, I've been very critical of, hey, let's bankroll Harmonious and scrap it within a year and not even have it finish out its tour as the 50th anniversary celebration of Walt Disney World before announcing another show to replace it. We can go down the list in terms of bad investments and so forth. This was an actual good one. Yeah, this was a very strong one. The revenue potential is there, absolutely. At a time when you got to get a little savvy, this was a savvy move.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm actually very excited to see what's on the horizon for for
Yes.
yeah, there you go. For
There we go.
For there you go.
There you go.
Well deserved, Mr. Chapek. and honestly, and you really have to get it because again, this was a decision made by Disney, a smart one.
Yeah.
Does anybody give Chapek that credit?
Of course not.
No.
This will be Daddy Josh. This will all be Daddy Josh.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it probably was a lot of Daddy Josh. But the fandom, but the fandom doesn't see, and then anything good is,
And then I'd give Josh the credit too, because it's like it's about time, you see something coming out of him as out of Parks and Resorts. I'm sorry, because as of right now, I have not yet seen it. So if that is good for him, and I can't wait to see what is in store for the Disney Cruise Line, and you fellas be ready for 2024. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
Jesus! Oh, geez, like super excited. Oh gosh, George, I am ecstatic about whatever you. George has something up his sleeve here, folks. You heard it here first. I don't know what he's got, but I'm excited to see what it is. But I assure you, folks, you'll know all about it when we return from such a voyage.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, fellas, for joining me today with, as Mr. Vashkai calls, a robust discussion, if you will. And speaking of Mr. Vashkai, tell them where they can find you on social media, brother.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vashkai on Twitter. It's going to be right down there. For, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the
Robust
discussion right there. It's been very, very interesting talking to you all. So I do appreciate all the comments and DMs and everything like that. Sometimes you provide content for the show. So keep them rolling for sure. And if you want to go ahead and see me, well, you're going to have to subscribe here to Orange Go 55, where you can see Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
All right, awesome. And of course, OG, can you give me my my little intro so I can give the outro?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Here we go.
And now your host,
Disney Family Man 23.
Thank you very much. As OG mentioned, I'm George, the Disney Family Man. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. If you want to interact with me, you could do so on Twitter at Disney George. Please keep a lookout for a Walk with Walt podcast with all that rich history of everything about the man himself, Mr. Walt Disney. Definitely check that out on Apple Podcast.
Link down below, by the way. Link down below.
And of course, you can find me here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And of course, a big thank you to the OG himself, Orange Grove 55. Thank you for coming on, brother. And of course, you can find him pretty much anywhere.
Right here.
He's everywhere.
Right here. I'm everywhere. But you can find me right here on OG 55. And I just want to say,
it's been an honor serving with you all.
Fantastic.
There you go. And with that being said, everyone, thank you, and you have a wonderful day.